which is, oh, hi there, it's Tom Cassidy here. We're talking about the Reasonable Eating Program. This is the best diet for long-term weight loss. It's also the best diet for a number of other things, for doing things easily, for not really struggling too hard, for not having to do too much exercise, and all stuff like that, all those jolly good things. And I'm going to talk this session, just a few minutes, on this concept of when to eat. So that's the whole wheel, and we're just going to zoom into this, and we're going to have a look at when to eat, the domain of when to eat. Now, just a quick recap. What we do with this program is we focus on just one thing at a time for a week, and then we move on to the next thing. There's 13 in total, so that means every 13 weeks we repeat the cycle, and we do that 4 times in a year. And there are 4 domains: what to eat, when to eat, how to eat, and why to eat. And this one's just going to focus on when to eat. And the 3 things that I'm going to talk about in general, and much more detail in later videos and on the full series that you can get if you search for the best diet in the world, Reasonable Eating. You'll get that on Udemy, and you can access that. It's no problem. And you can also follow the breadcrumbs to get the coaching program for this. But effectively, there's 3 things you need to do when working out when to eat. And the first of those is eat for hunger, not appetite. Sounds easy, sounds obvious, but most of the time, most of us are eating for appetite and not hunger. What's the difference? Hunger is actually the physiological need for nutrition and or energy. It's a physiological body needs. That's what hunger is defined as. Now, appetite is defined as a psychological desire for food. Now, a lot of the time they overlap, but the difference is, I suppose, most easily illustrated by the single operational algorithm for that week, which is, am I hungry enough to eat a stick of celery? If the answer is yes, you don't have to eat celery. You can eat pretty much anything you like. But that test shows you that you are actually going to be eating for hunger and not for appetite. And that's a great little question. Am I hungry enough to eat some celery? You can open the fridge, imagine if there was celery here, would I eat that? If the answer is no, that's a good sign that you're just eating for appetite. Okay, then you've got eat until no longer hungry. Possibly the hardest one. It really is quite tricky to do that, because a lot of time we eat with our eyes, and because we've started and it tastes good and we want to carry on. Some people eat till they're stuffed, others eat till they're full. Very, very, very few, vanishingly few people will eat until they're no longer hungry. And what that means is eat until you would no longer consider yourself eating for hunger, and from now on you're only eating for appetite. Now, I don't expect it's realistic. Not realistic to actually do the celery test in the middle of a bacon sandwich. You know, a lot of the time we make this difficult for ourselves because we have very big portions. So we tend to think that we've got to eat till we clear the plate. But actually, a good way to deal with this is the second you wonder whether or not you should have more, or the second you have head over whether you should finish it, or whether you should have second helpings, or whether you should have a pudding, a dessert, whatever, that's the point at which you are no longer hungry, because you've just hesitated. That point of just hesitating is the magic point. It's really the psychological trigger for, oh, from now on I'm going to be eating for appetite, so I don't need it. And that's a great one. And the second you think about it, that means you're not hungry anymore. And the third one is really interestingly, it's about the idea of eating naturally, not continuously. This is a biggie as well. And the concept is that humans probably didn't dissolve, I was going to say. Hopefully not. We didn't evolve to eat continuously all the time. Why? Because it's unlikely that for most of our evolutionary history we got food delivered regularly to us, either from the supermarket, or we collected it, or from Amazon, or wherever. It's more likely that there were times where it was very scarce and other times when it was fairly abundant. So the natural way to eat would be to be able to eat when it's there and also survive without it being there for extended periods. So you don't need to eat every 3 or 4 hours. That's a complete disaster. When I'm awake, I do tend to eat every 3 or 4 hours. But once I've started eating, I sort of try and eat in an 8-hour window during the day. We'll get into this later on, but well, what do I mean by that? I mean that Well, I know I can go about 8 to 10 hours every day without eating. And I do that because I sleep and I don't eat when I sleep. I'm sure some people have a snack just before bed and they wake up hungry, so they're maybe only going for 8 hours. But what I do is I genuinely don't feel hungry in the morning, so I don't eat breakfast. So I won't have my first food until noon, until midday. And then I will eat as much as I like, really, as long as I'm eating for hunger and not appetite, and stopping when I'm no longer hungry. I will eat until about 8 o'clock in the evening, and at that point I won't have any more food. So I will go from 8 in the evening to 12 the next day, which is a 16-hour period, and sometimes I go even longer. I try never to go less. Sometimes I might finish at 6:30 my evening meal and not eat till like 1 the next day, and I've gone like 19 or something like hours. But the point of this is, what we're trying to do is we're just trying to train our body to use its fat reserves. If we eat every 3 or 4 hours when we're awake, our bodies never get into this fasted state where we're trying to say, oh, we haven't got enough energy coming in, we'd better start activating some of our fat reserves. And every single hour you go beyond around about 12 hours, which is when the food that you've eaten has been properly digested and your glycogen reserves have been mostly used up. After about 12 hours, every single hour we do is tremendously valuable. It's weight training for the blood. It's weight training for your ability to eat for hunger and not appetite, and for you to manage your insulin sensitivity and all those great things. A lot of people will call this intermittent fasting. I don't like the idea of calling it fasting, because it's not. It's just eating naturally. It's just, it's having periods of time where you didn't eat. It's a very natural thing we used to do. So that's enough for me today. That's the domain of when to eat. This is the concept of this, is that this is the best diet for long-term weight loss, for energy, for health, because it's so simple and it's just one thing at a time. And that's me, Tom Cassidy. It's Reasonable Eating, and I hope you enjoyed it.